On the hottest day in 40 years, Noah Alvarez was just trying to get through another grueling shift at the warehouse. The single father had learned to keep his head down, work hard, and worry about nothing beyond his next paycheck and his son's medical bills. But when he spotted a baby turning blue inside a locked SUV in the parking lot, everything changed in an instant. Without hesitation, Noah grabbed his steel-toe boot and shattered the window, pulling the infant to safety and performing CPR until tiny lungs began working again. Then he did something that would spark a national manhunt, disappeared before police arrived, terrified that being sued for property damage would destroy his family's fragile financial stability. The rescue was caught on security cameras, and within hours, the search for the mystery dad in the orange vest had begun. But would Noah's act of heroism end up costing him everything he'd worked so hard to protect? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock screamed at 4:47 a.m., 3 minutes before Noah Alvarez had set it to ring. He'd been awake for the past hour anyway, listening to his 8-year-old son Miguel's labored breathing through the thin apartment walls. The boy's asthma had been acting up again, triggered by the unseasonably hot weather that had settled over their corner of Phoenix like a suffocating blanket. Noah rolled out of the sagging mattress he'd bought second-hand 2 years ago, his joints protesting the movement. 34 years old, and he already felt like an old man some mornings. The warehouse work was taking its toll, 10-hour shifts of lifting, loading, and moving boxes that seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. But it was steady work. And steady work meant Miguel got his medications on time. The eviction notice on the kitchen table caught his eye as he poured instant coffee into a chipped mug. Pink paper, official letterhead, final warning. Rent was 3 weeks overdue, and the landlord's patience had run out. Noah had been juggling bills like a circus performer, robbing Peter to pay Paul, but there was only so much juggling a man could do when the safety net had more holes than fabric. He folded the notice and slipped it into his wallet, next to the photo of Maria. His wife smiled back at him from behind the cracked plastic window, her dark eyes bright with the kind of hope that had died with her 4 years ago. Cancer had taken her quickly, but not before it had taken their savings, their house, and Noah's faith that hard work was enough to keep a family afloat. "Daddy?" Miguel's voice drifted from the bedroom, rough with sleep and congestion. "Right here, my Joe." Noah padded to his son's room, where the boy was sitting up in bed, the nebulizer mask hanging loose around his neck. "How are you feeling?" Miguel shrugged, the gesture so achingly familiar it made Noah's chest tighten. The boy had inherited his mother's expressive eyes and his father's stubborn streak, but he'd also inherited lungs that betrayed him when he needed them most. The doctors said he'd likely grow out of the worst of it, but that was cold comfort when your child couldn't breathe. "Want me to make you some eggs before I go?" "I'm not really hungry." Miguel's voice was small, defeated in a way that no 8-year-old should be. Noah sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the familiar weight of inadequacy settle on his shoulders. He wasn't like the other dads at Miguel's school, the ones who coached Little League and took their kids to Disneyland. He was the dad who worked weekends, who counted quarters for lunch money, who said maybe next time more often than yes. "You need to eat something, buddy. Mrs. Rodriguez will be here soon to walk you to camp." The day camp was free, a blessing from the community center that meant Miguel had somewhere safe to go during the summer months. Noah had filled out forms and swallowed his pride to qualify for the program, but his son was fed and supervised, and that was worth more than his dignity. Miguel nodded and shuffled to the kitchen, his bare feet slapping against the linoleum. Noah watched him go, noting the way the boy's shoulders hunched forward, protective and resigned. When had his son started looking so much older than his years? The apartment was small, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that opened into a living area, furnished with hand-me-downs and hope. But it was clean, and it was theirs, at least until the sheriff showed up with eviction papers. Noah had done his best to make it feel like home, hanging Miguel's artwork on the refrigerator and keeping family photos on the windowsill. But home was more than four walls and a roof, and Noah wondered if Miguel felt that absence as keenly as he did. "There's leftover pizza in the fridge," Noah called out, pulling on his work boots. Steel-toed, safety-approved, and comfortable enough for a 12-hour shift. He'd learned to buy quality where it counted, even if it meant eating ramen for a week. The drive to Southwest Distribution Center took 23 minutes in morning traffic, giving Noah time to think and worry in equal measure. The radio played songs he'd heard 1,000 times, interspersed with news reports about the heatwave that had the entire Southwest in its grip. Record-breaking temperatures, rolling blackouts, and warnings about heat stroke filled the airwaves like a broken record. Noah's pickup trucker, 2009 Ford with 180, 0 miles, and a temperamental air conditioner wheezed through the industrial district where he'd spent the last 4 years of his life. Warehouses stretched out like concrete monuments to commerce, their loading docks already buzzing with activity, despite the early hour. He parked in the employee lot and walked toward the Southwest Distribution Center, his orange safety vest bright against the gray morning. The vest was required gear, along with the hard hat and steel-toed boots. Noah was printed in black letters across the back, though most people just called him Alvarez or, "Hey you." The warehouse was a cathedral of commerce, its high ceilings and fluorescent lights creating a harsh, industrial atmosphere. Conveyor belts snaked through the building like mechanical arteries, carrying packages from loading dock to shipping bay in an endless stream. Noah had memorized every inch of the place, from the break room with its broken coffee machine to the supervisor's office with its motivational posters about teamwork and safety. "Morning, Alvarez." Jim Hendricks, the shift supervisor, was already at his desk with a cup of coffee and a clipboard full of orders. He was a decent man, former military like Noah, though he'd been lucky enough to transition into management instead of the loading dock. "Morning, Jim." Noah clocked in and grabbed his equipment handheld scanner, work gloves, and the radio that would chirp orders at him throughout the day. "We've got a full load coming in from California. Gonna be a long one." Noah nodded. Long days meant overtime, and overtime meant he might be able to catch up on Miguel's inhaler prescription. The boy was down to his last dose, and the pharmacy wouldn't refill without payment. $47 stood between his son and an asthma attack, and Noah would move mountains to earn it. The work was familiar, mind-numbing in its repetition. Scan the barcode, check the shipping label, load the package onto the correct truck. Repeat. His body moved on autopilot, while his mind wandered to the bills waiting at home, the eviction notice in his wallet, and the dozen small ways he was failing his son. Miguel deserved better. He deserved a father who could afford to take him to baseball games, who didn't have to choose between groceries and medicine, who didn't look exhausted every time he walked through the door. Noah had dreams, once plans for college, maybe a career in construction management or engineering. The army had given him skills, discipline, and a sense of purpose that civilian life had somehow stripped away. But dreams were luxuries he couldn't afford. Reality was the sweat stinging his eyes, the ache in his lower back, and the knowledge that no matter how hard he worked, it would never be quite enough. "Hey, Noah!" Carlos Mendoza, his usual loading partner, waved from across the warehouse floor. "You see that crazy video going around? Some guy saved a baby from a hot car yesterday." Noah's blood ran cold. "What video?" "Check it out." Carlos pulled out his phone and showed Noah a grainy security camera feed. The footage was black and white, but clear enough to show a man in an orange vest smashing a car window and pulling out a small form. Guy just disappeared after he saved the kid. Police are looking for him. Noah watched himself on the small screen, his heart hammering against his ribs. The video had been shared thousands of times, according to the counter at the bottom. Comments scrolled past. "Hero. Find this man. We need more people like this." But all Noah could see was the potential lawsuit, the hospital bills, the financial ruin that would follow if anyone discovered his identity. "Pretty amazing, right?" Carlos pocketed his phone. "I mean, who does that and then just walks away?" "Yeah," Noah managed. "Amazing." The rest of the shift passed in a blur of anxiety and forced normalcy. Noah went through the motions, scanning packages and loading trucks while his mind raced with possibilities. How long before someone recognized him? How long before the police showed up at his door? How long before his moment of heroism destroyed everything he'd worked so hard to build? By the time his shift ended, the temperature had climbed to 112 degrees, and the asphalt parking lot shimmered like a mirage. Noah sat in his truck for a long moment, the engine running and the air conditioner fighting a losing battle against the heat. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. Miguel asking when you'll be home. Made him lunch. Home. The word felt fragile, temporary, like something that could be taken away with a single knock on the door. Noah pulled out of the parking lot and headed back to the apartment, unaware that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. The security camera footage was already spreading across social media, and somewhere across town, a pediatric cardiologist named Dr. Eva Sinclair was watching the video of her rescued foster daughter with tears in her eyes. The mystery dad in the orange vest had become a symbol of hope in a world that seemed increasingly dark. But Noah Alvarez just wanted to get home to his son, pay his bills, and stay invisible. Sometimes, the universe had different plans. The previous day had started like any other, with Noah dragging himself out of bed at 4:47 a.m. to the sound of Miguel's labored breathing. But by 3:30 p.m., when the temperature gauge in his truck read 118 degrees, Noah knew this wasn't just another summer day in Phoenix. This was the kind of heat that killed people. The warehouse had felt like an oven all morning, despite the industrial fans that pushed hot air around like a convection system. Noah's orange safety vest clung to his back, soaked with sweat that never seemed to dry. The supervisor had called for extra water breaks, but there was only so much hydration could do when the air itself felt like breathing fire. Hottest day on record, Jim Hendricks announced over the intercom. We're shutting down loading dock 3. Too dangerous. Noah finished his shift and walked toward the parking lot, his legs heavy with exhaustion and heat. The asphalt was soft underfoot, and he could feel the heat radiating up through his steel-toed boots. His truck sat in the employee lot like a metal furnace, the steering wheel too hot to touch, even with work gloves. He was fishing for his keys when he heard a sound that made his blood freeze despite the oppressive heat. It was thin, desperate, barely audible over the hum of air conditioning units and idling engines. A baby crying. Noah looked around the parking lot, his eyes scanning the rows of cars baking in the sun. There, 3 spaces away, sat a black SUV with its windows rolled up tight. The crying was coming from inside. He approached slowly, his heart beginning to race. Through the tinted rear window, he could make out the shape of a car seat. And in that car seat, a small form was moving weakly, arms flailing in distress. Jesus Christ, Noah whispered, breaking into a run. The baby was maybe 6 months old, strapped into a rear-facing car seat in the back of the SUV. Even through the tinted glass, Noah could see the infant's face was flushed, deep red, the tiny mouth open in a silent scream. The child's movements were becoming sluggish, desperate. Noah tried the door handles. Locked. He cupped his hands against the window and peered inside. The baby's lips were taking on a blue tinge, and those small fists were no longer flailing with strength, but with the weak, uncoordinated movements of a child, slipping into heat exhaustion. "Hey!" Noah shouted, looking around the parking lot. "Someone's baby is in here." The lot was nearly empty, a few cars scattered here and there, but no people. No one coming to help, no one who might have the keys to this death trap. Noah's military training kicked in. Time was the enemy now. Every second that passed was a second closer to losing this child. He'd seen heat casualties in Afghanistan, had watched strong soldiers collapse when the temperature soared past 120 degrees. A baby wouldn't last 10 minutes in this furnace. He looked around for something to break the window. His truck was too far away, and he didn't have time to run back for tools. The baby's crying had stopped, which was worse than the sound itself. Silence meant the child was losing the fight. Noah looked down at his feet. Steel-toed boots. Military issue, built to withstand punishment. They'd have to do. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the SUV's owner, wherever they were. "I'm so sorry." He braced himself against the side of the vehicle and drove his right boot into the rear passenger window. The safety glass spider-webbed, but held. Noah kicked again, harder this time, putting his full weight behind it. The window exploded inward, spraying tempered glass across the back seat. The heat that rolled out of the SUV hit him like a physical blow. It had to be 140 degrees inside that car, maybe more. Noah reached through the broken window, his arms getting torn by glass fragments, and fumbled with the car seat's straps. The baby was unconscious now, tiny body limp and burning hot to the touch. Noah's hands shook as he worked the unfamiliar buckles, precious seconds ticking away. Finally, the straps came free, and he lifted the infant out of the car seat. The child felt like a small furnace in his arms, radiating heat that spoke of organs shutting down and systems failing. Noah had seen this before, in the desert, in places where the sun was an enemy more deadly than bullets. He knelt in the narrow shade between two cars, cradling the baby against his chest. The infant's breathing was shallow, rapid, and Noah could feel the tiny heart racing like a hummingbird's. Heat stroke. Advanced stage. "Come on, baby," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Stay with me." Noah's combat medic training from 15 years ago came flooding back. Cool the core temperature, restore breathing, support circulation. He pulled off his soaked safety vest and wrapped the baby in it, creating a barrier between the child and the scorching air. The infant's breathing had become irregular, and Noah could see the small lips turning blue, respiratory distress. He needed to act fast. Supporting the baby's head with one hand, Noah tilted the chin up slightly and checked the airway. Clear. He placed his mouth over the tiny nose and mouth, giving gentle puffs of air. The chest rose and fell with each breath he provided. "Come on," he whispered between breaths. "Come on, little one." After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds, the baby's color began to improve. The blue tinge faded from those small lips, and Noah felt a weak but steady pulse in the tiny wrist. The sound of sirens in the distance made Noah's heart lurch for a different reason. Someone must have called 911. Within minutes, this parking lot would be full of police, paramedics, and questions he couldn't answer. The baby's eyes fluttered open dark brown. Like Miguel's sand, Noah felt a moment of pure relief. Those eyes focused on his face with the clarity of a child who was going to survive. "There you are," Noah whispered, continuing to support the infant's breathing. "You're going to be okay." But even as he spoke the words, Noah's mind was racing ahead to the consequences. The SUV owner would want to press charges for the broken window. There would be police reports, insurance claims, lawyers, the kind of legal complications that a man living paycheck to paycheck couldn't afford. He thought of Miguel, waiting at home with Mrs. Rodriguez. He thought of the eviction notice in his wallet, the medical bills on his kitchen table, the $47 he needed for his son's inhaler. One lawsuit, even a frivolous one, would destroy everything he'd worked to build. The sirens were getting closer. Noah could see the flashing lights at the far end of the industrial district. He looked down at the baby in his arms, now breathing steadily and looking around with alert, curious eyes. The child would be fine. The paramedics would take over, provide proper medical care, and this little one would go home to parents who would never again make the mistake of leaving their child in a hot car. Noah's job was done, and if he was smart, he'd be gone before anyone could connect him to the broken window and the property damage that would surely follow. He stood carefully, still supporting the baby's head, and looked around the parking lot. No one in sight. The sirens were maybe 2 minutes away, but there was a small area of shade between two buildings where he could leave the child safely. Noah walked quickly to the shaded spot and gently placed the baby on the ground, still wrapped in his orange safety vest. The infant looked up at him with those dark eyes, and Noah felt something crack inside his chest. "Someone's coming to help you," he whispered, brushing a finger against the small cheek. "You're going to be just fine." Then he turned and walked away, his heart hammering against his ribs. He reached his truck just as the first ambulance turned into the parking lot, followed by 2 police cars and a fire truck. Noah started the engine and pulled out of the lot, taking a different exit to avoid the emergency vehicles. In his rearview mirror, he could see the paramedics rushing toward the shade where he'd left the baby. The child would be in good hands now, professional hands. Noah drove home through the hellish afternoon heat, his hands still shaking from adrenaline and fear. He'd saved a life today, but at what cost? How long before someone reviewed the security footage? How long before they traced the broken window back to him? Miguel was waiting at the apartment, playing quietly with his toy cars, while Mrs. Rodriguez watched her afternoon soap operas. The boy looked up when Noah walked in, and his face lit up with the kind of smile that made every sacrifice worthwhile. "Daddy, you're home early." "Yeah, me, Joe," Noah said, kneeling down to hug his son. "They let us go because of the heat." But as he held Miguel close, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just changed their lives forever. Somewhere in the city, a baby was alive because of what he'd done. And somewhere else, security cameras had recorded every moment of it. The mystery dad in the orange vest had been born in that scorching parking lot, though Noah wouldn't know it for several more hours. All he knew was that he'd done what any father would do. He'd saved a child. Everything else would have to wait for tomorrow. Noah woke up to his phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. 6:23 a.m. 3 missed calls from his supervisor, 2 from his mother in Tucson, and 17 text messages from numbers he didn't recognize. His stomach dropped as he realized what this meant. The first text was from Carlos. "Dude, turn on channel 12, now." Noah stumbled to the living room and flicked on the old television. The morning news was already in full swing, and there, filling the screen, was grainy security footage of a man in an orange vest smashing a car window. "The dramatic rescue that has captivated the entire nation," the anchor was saying. The mystery hero, dubbed the Dad in the Orange Vest, disappeared before police could question him. The infant, who doctors say was minutes away from death, has been placed in protective custody while authorities search for her parents. Noah's hands trembled as he reached for the remote to turn up the volume. The baby had been abandoned. Someone had deliberately left that child in the car to die, and now she was alone in the world, just like he and Miguel had been after Maria died. Police are asking anyone with information about this man's identity to come forward. The vehicle owner has been arrested on charges of child endangerment and attempted murder. The relief that flooded through Noah was immediate and overwhelming. No lawsuit, no property damage claims. The person who'd left that baby to die was in jail, and Noah was still just a face on a security camera. But the relief was short-lived. The news station was running the footage on a loop, and with each repetition, Noah could see more details. The way he walked, the shape of his shoulders, the particular way he'd kicked the window, how long before someone at the warehouse recognized him. Miguel shuffled into the living room, rubbing his eyes. "Daddy, why are you watching TV so early?" Noah quickly changed the channel to cartoons. "Just checking the weather, Mijo. How are you feeling?" "Okay, I guess." Miguel climbed onto the couch next to his father. "Mrs. Rodriguez said there was a man on TV who saved a baby. She said he was a hero." "Yeah?" Noah's voice came out strained. "What do you think about that?" Miguel considered this seriously, the way he approached all of life's big questions. "I think he was brave. Mom always said that being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared." Noah's throat tightened. Maria had said exactly that, usually when she was getting ready for another round of chemotherapy or when she was explaining to Miguel why Daddy had to work so many hours. "Your mom was a smart lady." "I wish I could be brave like that man," Miguel said quietly. "I wish I could save people." Noah pulled his son closer, breathing in the familiar scent of the strawberry shampoo Mrs. Rodriguez used for his baths. "You are brave, my Joe. Every day you're brave." But as Miguel settled against his side to watch cartoons, Noah's mind was racing ahead to all the complications this viral video would bring. His phone was still buzzing with messages, and he knew he'd have to face the warehouse full of questions and speculation. The morning news had moved on to other stories, but Noah knew this was just the beginning. The footage would spread across social media, be analyzed and shared and discussed until everyone in the city had seen it. Someone would recognize him eventually. At the warehouse, the atmosphere was electric with excitement and speculation. Groups of workers clustered around phones, re-watching the video and offering theories about the mystery hero's identity. "I'm telling you, it's military," Carlos was saying to a group near the loading dock. "Look at the way he moves, the way he handles the situation. That's combat training." "Could be a cop," suggested Maria Santos from the packaging department. "Or a firefighter, someone with emergency response experience." Noah kept his head down and focused on his work, but he could feel the weight of every conversation, every glance, every speculation. Jim Hendricks had nodded to him when he arrived, but hadn't said anything about the video. Yet, by lunch break, the story had exploded across every major news network. Noah sat in his truck, eating a peanut butter sandwich while CNN played on his phone. The baby, now officially named Miracle Maya by the media, was being treated at Phoenix Children's Hospital by a team of specialists. The reporter was standing outside the hospital, her makeup wilting in the heat. Dr. Eva Sinclair, the pediatric cardiologist who's been treating Maya, says the child has made a remarkable recovery. But she's also issued a stark warning about the dangers of leaving children in hot cars. The camera cut to a woman in a white coat, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She was probably in her late 30s, with the kind of controlled composure that spoke of years in high-pressure medical situations. Maya was approximately 2 minutes from death when she was brought in. Dr. Sinclair was saying. Her core temperature was 108 degrees, another minute or two, and we would have been looking at irreversible brain damage or death. Her voice was steady, professional, but Noah could see something else in her eyes, a personal intensity that went beyond medical concern. The person who saved Maya's life showed incredible courage and quick thinking. Without their intervention, we would be dealing with a tragedy instead of a miracle. The reporter pressed for more details about Maya's condition, but Dr. Sinclair was already turning away, clearly uncomfortable with the media attention. Noah found himself wondering about her story, about why she'd chosen to specialize in pediatric cardiology, about whether she had children of her own. His phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. "Saw the baby doctor on TV. She seems nice. Mrs. Rodriguez made me soup." Noah smiled despite his anxiety. Miguel had always been a good judge of character, even at 8 years old. If he thought Dr. Sinclair seemed nice, she probably was. The afternoon brought more complications. A reporter from Channel 12 had shown up at the warehouse, asking to interview workers about the mystery hero. Jim Hendricks had refused to let them on the property, but Noah could see the news van parked across the street, waiting. "They're offering a reward," Carlos announced during the afternoon break. $10,000 for information leading to the identity of the orange vest dad. $10,000. Noah's mind immediately went to Miguel's medical bills, the eviction notice, the countless small emergencies that kept them barely above water. That money could change everything for them. But it would also destroy everything. The attention, the scrutiny, the lawyers who would inevitably follow Noah knew he couldn't handle that kind of pressure. He was a single father trying to keep his head above water, not a hero looking for recognition. "What do you think, Noah?" Carlos asked. "You think the guy will come forward?" Noah shrugged, not trusting his voice. Maybe he has his reasons for staying quiet. What reasons? The man's a hero. He should be proud of what he did. But Noah knew better. Heroes in movies got parades and medals. Heroes in real life got lawsuits and complications and attention they couldn't afford. The system wasn't built for people like him, people who did the right thing and then went back to work because they had bills to pay. That evening, Noah sat at his kitchen table with Miguel, helping with homework while the news played softly in the background. The eviction notice was still there, a pink reminder of everything that was at stake. "Daddy," Miguel looked up from his math worksheet. "Are you okay? You seem sad." Noah studied his son's face, seeing Maria's eyes and his own stubborn jawline. Miguel was the best thing in his life, the reason he got up every morning and kept fighting. Everything Noah did was for this boy, including staying silent about what had happened in that parking lot. "I'm fine, Mijo, just tired." Mrs. Rodriguez said that Hero Man has a little boy too. She said maybe that's why he saved the baby. Noah's pen stopped moving. "She said that?" "She said when you have kids, you understand how precious they are." She said the man probably looked at that baby and thought about his own child. The wisdom in Miguel's voice, wisdom that came from too much experience with loss and struggle, made Noah's chest tighten. His son was right. In that moment when he'd seen the baby in distress, Noah had thought about Miguel, about how he'd feel if someone had left his son to die in a hot car. "Mrs. Rodriguez is a smart lady," Noah said quietly. "I hope they find him," Miguel said, returning to his math. "I hope they tell him thank you." Noah watched his son work, the small tongue poking out in concentration, the careful way he formed each number. Miguel would never know that his father was the man on the television, the hero everyone was talking about. That secret would stay buried, along with Noah's military medals and Maria's love letters, and all the other pieces of himself he'd sacrificed to keep his family safe. Later that night, after Miguel had gone to bed, Noah sat on the couch and watched the news coverage one more time. The footage was clearer now, enhanced by the station's technical team. He could see his own face in profile, the concentration as he worked to free the baby from the car seat. The reporter was interviewing random people on the street, asking what they thought about the mystery hero. "He's an angel," said an elderly woman. "God put him in the right place at the right time." "Real men step up when it matters," said a young father holding his toddler. "This guy represents the best of humanity." Noah turned off the television and checked the locks on his door. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more speculation, more chances for someone to recognize him. But for tonight, he was just Noah Alvarez, single father and warehouse worker, trying to keep his family together one day at a time. In the morning, he would go back to work and pretend he'd never seen the video. He would smile and nod when his co-workers talked about the hero, and he would do everything in his power to remain invisible. Because sometimes the greatest act of courage is knowing when to stay silent. The hospital bracelet from baby Maya's treatment sat in an evidence bag at the police station, a small plastic band that connected her to the mysterious man who'd saved her life. But Noah would never see it, never know that it existed. He was already planning his next disappearing act, the same one he'd been performing for 4 years, ever since Maria died, and left him alone to raise their son in a world that seemed determined to break them both. 3 days after the rescue, Noah's carefully constructed world of anonymity began to crumble. The police had narrowed their search to the industrial district, and Detective Sarah Chen was methodically visiting every business within a 2-mile radius of the warehouse where the incident occurred. Noah was loading a truck bound for Flagstaff when Jim Hendricks approached him, his expression grim. "Police want to talk to all the guys who worked Tuesday afternoon. They're in the conference room." Noah's mouth went dry. What do they want to know? Just routine questions. They're showing everyone the video, asking if anyone recognizes the guy. Jim studied Noah's face. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired," Noah managed. "Miguel's asthma has been acting up." The conference room smelled like stale coffee and industrial disinfectant. Detective Chen was a compact woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalogue every detail. She had the video queued up on her laptop, and Noah was forced to watch himself save Maya's life for the 10th time. "We know this man works somewhere in this area," Detective Chen was saying. "The timestamp puts him here at 3:47 p.m. on Tuesday, which suggests he'd just finished a shift. Southwest Distribution is the largest employer in the district." Noah sat in the back row, his hands folded carefully in his lap to hide their trembling. Around him, his co-workers studied the grainy footage with intense concentration. "Look at the way he moves," Carlos whispered. "Definitely military training." "Could be anyone," muttered Steve from shipping. "Hard to tell much from that angle." Detective Chen played the video again, zooming in on different sections. "Notice the steel-toed boots. That's consistent with warehouse work. And the way he handles the emergency, this isn't someone who panics under pressure." Noah's heart hammered as the detective's eyes swept the room. He forced himself to look interested but not overly concerned, the same expression he'd perfected during his years in the army when superiors asked uncomfortable questions. "If anyone recognizes this man, or if you have any information about his identity, please contact me immediately." Detective Chen handed out business cards. "This isn't about getting anyone in trouble. This man saved a child's life. He's a hero." After the meeting, Noah walked to his truck on unsteady legs. The business card felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in his pocket. He sat in the parking lot for a long moment, watching the detective's unmarked car pull away. His phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. "Mrs. Rodriguez says you're famous now. She saw your work on the news." Noah's blood turned to ice. He called Mrs. Rodriguez immediately. "Noah, my Joe," she answered in her warm, grandmotherly voice. "I was just telling Miguel how proud I am of you boys at the warehouse. Such important work you do." "What did you mean about the news?" "Oh, that reporter lady came by asking about the hero man. She said he might work at Southwest Distribution. I told her you boys are all heroes, working so hard to take care of your families." Noah closed his eyes in relief. Mrs. Rodriguez was kind but not particularly observant. She'd probably watched the video a dozen times without connecting it to the man who'd been coming to her door every morning for 2 years. That evening, Noah sat at his kitchen table with a different kind of homework. Hidden in his bedroom dresser, beneath old t-shirts and Miguel's outgrown clothes, was a small wooden box that contained the remnants of his military service. 2 purple hearts, a bronze star, and a set of dog tags that read, "Alvarez, Noah M." The medals meant nothing to him now, but the dog tags carried weight. They were a reminder of who he'd been before Maria died, before civilian life stripped away his sense of purpose and left him adrift in a world that seemed determined to break him. He'd been a combat medic with the 75th Ranger Regiment, serving 3 tours in Afghanistan. His job had been to run toward danger while everyone else ran away, to make life-or-death decisions in seconds, to save lives under the worst possible circumstances. The skills that had saved Maya's life weren't accidental. They were burned into his muscle memory through years of training and combat experience. When he'd seen that baby in distress, 15 years of emergency medical training had taken over. But Noah had left that life behind for a reason. The army had taught him to save lives, but it had also taught him to take them. He'd done things in the desert that he couldn't undo, seen things that still woke him up at night. When Maria got sick, he'd used his veterans' benefits to get out early, hoping to start fresh as a civilian. Civilian life had been harder than he'd expected. His military experience didn't translate to office jobs, and his medical training was worthless without expensive civilian certifications. He'd ended up at the warehouse because it was honest work that paid enough to keep a roof over their heads. Now, sitting in his small apartment with Miguel asleep in the next room, Noah wondered if he'd been hiding from more than just his past. Maybe he'd been hiding from himself. The dog tags felt warm in his palm, familiar weight that connected him to the man he'd been. That man had saved lives in Kandahar and Helmand Province. That man had been trusted with the most important job in the military, bringing soldiers home alive. Maya wasn't the first life he'd saved, but she might be the most important. Not because she was more valuable than the soldiers he'd treated, but because saving her had reminded him of who he really was, beneath the exhaustion and financial stress. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Noah quickly returned the dog tags to their hiding place and went to answer it. Mrs. Rodriguez stood in the hallway, holding a plate covered with aluminum foil. "I made extra enchiladas," she said, but her eyes were studying his face with new intensity. "You look troubled, Mijo." "Just tired," Noah said, accepting the plate. "Thank you for watching Miguel today. That boy is an angel, no trouble at all." She paused in the doorway. "You know, I've been thinking about that hero man on the television." Noah's chest tightened. "Yeah? I think he must be a father. The way he moved, the way he handled that baby, that's not just training, that's love." Noah nodded, not trusting his voice. "I hope they find him," Mrs. Rodriguez continued. "I hope they tell him how grateful we all are. Sometimes good people don't know how much they matter." After she left, Noah sat in his kitchen eating enchiladas and thinking about her words. How much did he matter? To Miguel, certainly. To the handful of people who knew him well enough to call him by name. But to the world at large, he was invisible, just another struggling single father trying to make ends meet. The viral video had changed that, even if no one knew his name. For the first time in years, Noah Alvarez had mattered to strangers. He'd been called a hero, an angel, a representation of the best of humanity. The attention terrified him, but it also filled a void he hadn't realized existed. Late that night, Noah stood in Miguel's doorway, watching his son sleep. The boy's breathing was steady and clear, a small blessing in their complicated world. Miguel's inhaler sat on the nightstand, nearly empty again despite Noah's careful rationing. $47. That's what stood between his son and an asthma attack. The reward money for identifying the orange vest dad would solve that problem and dozens of others. But it would also destroy the quiet life Noah had built for them. He thought about Dr. Eva Sinclair, the pediatric cardiologist who'd treated Maya. She'd looked tired on television, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from caring too much about people you couldn't save. Noah recognized that look because he'd worn it himself, during those long months when Maria was dying and he was powerless to help her. Maybe Dr. Sinclair understood the weight of invisible heroism, the kind that happened in hospital rooms and apartments and other places where cameras didn't follow. Maybe she knew what it felt like to save a life and then go home to an empty house and wonder if it was enough. Noah's phone buzzed with a news alert. The story was spreading beyond Phoenix now, picked up by national networks and social media influencers. The hashtag #OrangeVestDad was trending on Twitter, with thousands of people sharing their own stories of everyday heroism. But there was also a darker side to the attention. Internet detectives were analyzing the video frame by frame, trying to identify the mystery hero. Someone had started a forum dedicated to tracking down his identity, complete with theories about his background and speculation about his motives. Noah read through the comments with growing alarm. People were dissecting his appearance, his clothing, his movements. They were treating him like a puzzle to be solved, rather than a person with a family to protect. One comment in particular made his blood run cold. "Based on the uniform and the location, I'm 90% sure this guy works at Southwest Distribution. Anyone know someone who matches this description?" Noah closed his phone and double-checked the locks on his door. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more scrutiny, more chances for someone to connect the dots, but for tonight, he was still invisible. In the morning, he would return to work and continue his disappearing act. He would smile and nod when his co-workers talked about the hero, and he would do everything in his power to remain just another face in the crowd. But deep down, Noah knew his time was running out. The truth had a way of surfacing, especially when so many people were looking for it, and when it did, everything would change for him and Miguel. The dog tags in his dresser drawer seemed to call to him, a reminder of the man he'd been and the man he might still become. But for now, Noah Alvarez was content to be a mystery, a ghost in an orange vest who'd saved a life and disappeared into the crowd. Sometimes that was enough. The end came on a Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after Noah had saved Maya's life. Detective Chen arrived at Southwest Distribution with a warrant and a team of technicians who'd spent the night analyzing the warehouse's internal security footage. Noah was loading a truck bound for Tucson when Jim Hendricks appeared at his elbow, his face grim. They want to see you in the office. The walk across the warehouse floor felt like a death march. Noah's co-workers stopped what they were doing to stare, their expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. Carlos gave him a questioning look, but Noah couldn't manage even a reassuring nod. Detective Chen was waiting in the conference room with a laptop and a stack of papers. She looked up when Noah entered, her sharp eyes taking in his uniform, his posture, the way he carried himself. "Mr. Alvarez," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "please have a seat." Noah sat across from her, his hands folded in his lap. Through the window, he could see news vans gathering in the parking lot like vultures. "I'm going to show you some footage," Detective Chen said, opening her laptop. "This is from your warehouse's internal security system, time-stamped at 3:43 p.m. last Tuesday." The screen showed Noah walking across the warehouse floor, his orange vest bright against the industrial background. He was moving with purpose, checking his phone, clearly ready to end his shift. "And this," Detective Chen continued, clicking to a different file, "is from the parking lot camera." Noah watched himself walk to his truck, then suddenly stop and turn toward the black SUV. Even without sound, his body language told the story the moment of recognition, the sprint toward the car, the desperate attempt to reach the baby inside. "The facial recognition software gives us a 97% match," Detective Chen said quietly. "But I don't need a computer to tell me what I can see with my own eyes." Noah stared at the screen, watching himself perform CPR on a baby while sirens wailed in the distance. The man in the video looked calm, competent, trained. He looked like someone who'd done this before. "Noah Miguel Alvarez." Detective Chen read from a file. Age 34. Combat medic with the 75th Ranger Regiment. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Purple Heart recipient. Honorably discharged 4 years ago. She closed the laptop and studied his face. "You want to tell me why you didn't come forward?" Noah's throat felt like sandpaper. "I have a son. I know about Miguel. 8 years old, asthmatic, lost his mother to cancer." Detective Chen's voice softened slightly. "You were protecting him." "I was protecting us both." Noah's voice came out as a whisper. "I couldn't afford a lawsuit. I couldn't afford the attention. I just wanted to save that baby and go home." "The baby you saved is named Maya. She's 6 months old, and she's doing well. Better than well, actually. She's thriving." Noah felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "Good, that's good. Her biological parents are in jail. Child endangerment, attempted murder, drug charges. Maya's been placed with a foster family, but it's temporary. She needs a permanent home." Detective Chen leaned forward. "The person who abandoned her to die in that car is the one facing charges, not you. In fact, the district attorney wants to give you a medal." "I don't want a medal." "I didn't think you did." Detective Chen smiled for the first time since Noah had met her. "But there's someone who wants to meet you. Dr. Eva Sinclair, the pediatric cardiologist who treated Maya." Noah's heart skipped. He'd seen Dr. Sinclair on television, had wondered about the intensity in her eyes when she talked about Maya's condition. "She's been asking about you since the day Maya was brought in. She wants to thank you personally." "I don't need thanks." "Maybe not, but she does." Detective Chen stood up. "She's waiting outside." The door opened, and Dr. Eva Sinclair walked into the conference room. In person, she was smaller than she'd appeared on television, but her presence filled the space. She wore dark slacks and a cream-colored blouse under her white coat, her dark hair pulled back in the same severe bun Noah remembered from the news footage. "Mr. Alvarez," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Dr. Sinclair." Noah stood and shook her hand, surprised by the firmness of her grip. "Noah, please." "Noah." She studied his face with the same intensity she'd shown on television. "I wanted to thank you for what you did. Maya wouldn't be alive without you. Anyone would have done the same thing." "No, Doctor," Sinclair said firmly. "They wouldn't. I've seen too many cases where people walked away, where they decided it wasn't their problem. You didn't walk away." There was something in her voice, a personal weight that suggested she was speaking from experience. Noah wondered what she'd seen in her years as a pediatric cardiologist, what losses she'd witnessed that had shaped her perspective. "How is she, Maya?" Dr. Sinclair's face softened. "She's remarkable. No lasting effects from the heat exposure, no brain damage, no cardiac issues. She's a healthy, happy baby who loves to smile." She paused. "She's staying with me temporarily while we work out permanent placement." "You're fostering her?" "I have experience with emergency placements. Maya needed specialized monitoring after her ordeal, and I was able to provide that at home." Dr. Sinclair's professional mask slipped slightly. "She's an extraordinary child." Detective Chen cleared her throat. "Dr. Sinclair has something she'd like to discuss with you, Noah. I'll leave you two to talk." After the detective left, Dr. Sinclair sat across from Noah, her hands folded on the table. For a moment, neither of them spoke, and Noah found himself studying her face, trying to understand what lay beneath her composed exterior. "I run a children's clinic," she said finally. "It's small, underfunded, but we serve families who can't afford traditional medical care, families like yours." Noah felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I pay for Miguel's care." "I know you do. I've seen your son's medical records. Miguel Alvarez, age 8, chronic asthma, mother deceased. You've been managing his condition well, considering your circumstances." "You looked up my son?" "I look up all the families in our database when they're connected to emergency cases. It's part of my job." Dr. Sinclair leaned forward. "Your son could benefit from our services. We offer sliding scale fees, preventive care programs, and we specialize in pediatric respiratory conditions." Noah's defenses went up. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity, it's healthcare." Her voice was matter-of-fact. "But that's not why I'm here." She pulled a manila folder from her briefcase and placed it on the table. "The clinic needs a maintenance manager. Someone who can handle basic repairs, oversee facility improvements, and help with general operations. The position comes with health insurance for you and Miguel." Noah stared at the folder without opening it. "Why me?" "Because you have skills that most people don't. Military experience, medical training, and the kind of judgment that saves lives." Dr. Sinclair's eyes met his. "And because I think you understand what it means to care for children. I work at the warehouse. The warehouse pays you enough to barely survive. This position pays enough to live." She gestured toward the folder. "There's also a training component. We need someone who can serve as an on-call first aid volunteer for community events, school programs, emergency situations." Noah finally opened the folder. The salary was nearly double what he made at Southwest Distribution, and the benefits package included full medical coverage for both him and Miguel. It seemed too good to be true. "What's the catch?" Dr. Sinclair was quiet for a long moment. "The clinic is struggling financially. We're operating on grants and donations, and we're always one funding cut away from closing. It's not the most secure job in the world." "Why do you do it?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She looked down at her hands, and Noah saw a brief crack in her professional facade. "Because children deserve better than what the system offers them," she said quietly. "Because someone has to advocate for the families who can't advocate for themselves." There was something else there, something personal that she wasn't sharing. Noah recognized the look of someone carrying old wounds, the way their edges showed through even the most carefully constructed walls. "I'll need to think about it," Noah said. "Of course." Dr. Sinclair stood up. "Take the folder home, discuss it with Miguel. The offer stands whenever you're ready." She paused at the door. "There's one more thing. Maya's placement with me is temporary, but I'm considering making it permanent. I'm starting the adoption process." "That's wonderful," Noah said, and meant it. "She's going to need stability, continuity of care. If you take the position at the clinic, you'd be part of that stability. You'd see her grow up, see her thrive." After Dr. Sinclair left, Noah sat alone in the conference room with the manila folder. Through the window, he could see the news vans, the reporters setting up their cameras, the growing crowd of curious onlookers. His quiet life was over. The story would break within hours, and by evening, every major network would have his name and face. Miguel would find out that his father was the mystery hero everyone had been talking about. But maybe that wasn't entirely bad. Maybe Miguel deserved to know that his father was capable of extraordinary things, that the man who struggled to pay rent and count quarters for groceries was also the man who'd saved a baby's life. Noah opened the folder and began to read. The clinic was called Phoenix Children's Community Health Center, and it was located in a converted house on the south side of the city. The mission statement talked about serving underserved populations, providing preventive care, and building healthier communities, one family at a time. The blueprints showed a building that had seen better days. The roof needed work. The plumbing was outdated, and the electrical system was a patchwork of repairs and temporary fixes. It was the kind of place that survived on hope and determination rather than adequate funding. But it was also the kind of place that made a difference. The photo gallery showed children laughing in waiting rooms, families receiving care they couldn't afford elsewhere, staff members who clearly loved their work despite the challenges. Noah thought about Miguel, about the times they'd sat in emergency rooms waiting for care, about the medical bills that seemed to multiply faster than he could pay them. This clinic could change that, not just for them but for hundreds of other families facing the same struggles. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "The news says they found the hero man. Miguel is so excited. Are you coming home soon?" Noah smiled despite everything. Home. For the first time in years, that word carried the possibility of something better than mere survival. He closed the folder and stood up. Outside, the media circus was growing, but Noah wasn't afraid anymore. He'd spent 4 years trying to disappear, to become invisible, to protect his family by hiding from the world. Maybe it was time to try a different approach. Maybe it was time to step out of the shadows and build something better for Miguel, for Maya, for all the children who deserved more than the system was willing to give them. The clinic blueprints felt like a roadmap to a future he'd never dared to imagine. And for the first time since Maria died, Noah allowed himself to hope that tomorrow might be better than today. 2 weeks later, Noah stood in the lobby of Phoenix Children's Community Health Center, holding a well-worn first aid training manual that had become his constant companion. The building was even more challenging than the blueprints had suggested, peeling paint, creaky floors, and a heating system that sounded like it was dying a slow, mechanical death. But it was also full of life. Children's artwork covered the walls, handmade thank you cards were pinned to bulletin boards, and the sound of laughter echoed from the pediatric wing despite the early morning hour. The water heater went out again, Dr. Sinclair announced, appearing from the back office with her white coat already wrinkled and her hair escaping its usual severe bun. "Third time this month." "I'll take a look at it," Noah said, making a note in the small spiral notebook he'd started carrying. In 2 weeks, he'd already replaced 3 light fixtures, unclogged 2 drain lines, and jury-rigged a temporary fix for the air conditioning unit that kept the vaccine refrigerators running. Dr. Sinclair Eva, she'd insisted, though Noah still struggled with the informality, had been right about the clinic's financial precariousness. Every repair was a negotiation between necessity and budget. Every improvement a careful calculation of cost versus benefit. But Noah had discovered something unexpected in the challenge. He was good at this. His military experience had taught him to work with limited resources, to find creative solutions to impossible problems, and to maintain equipment under the worst possible conditions. "How's the first aid training going?" Eva asked, nodding toward the manual in his hands. "Good. Better than expected, actually." Noah had been surprised by how much of his combat medic training had stayed with him. The protocols had been updated, the equipment had improved, but the fundamentals remained the same: assess, stabilize, treat, monitor. "Dr. Martinez wants you to observe in the emergency bay today. She thinks you're ready to start hands-on training." Dr. Carmen Martinez was the clinic's emergency pediatrician, a tough woman in her 50s who'd spent 20 years in county hospital emergency rooms before joining Eva's team. She didn't suffer fools, didn't coddle trainees, and had initially been skeptical of Noah's lack of formal medical credentials. But she'd warmed to him over the past 2 weeks, especially after he'd correctly identified the signs of appendicitis in a 7-year-old whose parents had brought him in for what they thought was a stomach bug. "I'd like that," Noah said. The emergency bay was a controlled chaos of activity. 2 nurses moved efficiently between treatment rooms, while Dr. Martinez examined a toddler who'd apparently decided that crayons were edible. In the corner, a teenager with a suspected broken wrist waited patiently while his mother filled out paperwork. "Alvarez," Dr. Martinez called out without looking up. "Room 3, possible allergic reaction." Noah grabbed a pair of gloves and followed her into the treatment room, where a 6-year-old girl sat on the examination table, her face flushed and swollen. Her mother hovered nearby, wringing her hands. "She ate a peanut butter cookie at school," the mother was explaining. "She's never had an allergic reaction before, but her face started swelling on the way home." Dr. Martinez was already preparing an epinephrine injection. "Has she had any difficulty breathing? Any wheezing or chest tightness?" "A little," the mother admitted. "It started about 10 minutes ago." "Noah, what do you see?" Dr. Martinez asked, her hands steady as she administered the injection. Noah studied the child, his training taking over. Facial edema, particularly around the eyes and lips. Slight respiratory distress, probably early bronchospasm. Heart rate elevated, but not dangerously so. Treatment plan: epinephrine, which you've already given. Oxygen, if respiratory symptoms worsen. IV, antihistamines and corticosteroids to prevent biphasic reaction. Continuous monitoring for the next 4 hours, minimum. Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. "Good. Set up the 4, and I'll get the medications." Noah had inserted hundreds of IVs during his military service, but this was different. The child was scared, looking up at him with wide, trusting eyes. Her mother watched every movement, ready to intervene if her daughter showed any sign of distress. "What's your name?" Noah asked as he prepared the IV kit. "Sarah," the girl whispered. "That's a beautiful name. I have a little boy at home named Miguel. He's a little older than you, and he sometimes has trouble breathing too." Noah's voice was calm, conversational, as he found a vein in Sarah's small arm. "You're going to feel a little pinch, okay?" The IV went in smoothly, and Sarah barely flinched. Within minutes, her breathing had improved, and the swelling in her face began to subside. "You're very good with children," Dr. Martinez observed later as they completed Sarah's paperwork. "Have you considered formal medical training?" "I'm 34 years old with an 8-year-old son and no college degree," Noah said. "Medical school isn't exactly in the cards." "Medical school, no, but there are other paths. Paramedic certification, nursing programs with military credit, physician assistant programs that value your experience." Dr. Martinez studied his face. "Don't sell yourself short. You have instincts that can't be taught." That afternoon, Noah was replacing a broken window latch in the pediatric wing when he heard familiar laughter from down the hall. He followed the sound to find Eva sitting on the floor of her office, playing with Maya. The baby had grown in the 3 weeks since Noah had saved her life. She was sitting up on her own now, reaching for colorful blocks with the kind of focused determination that reminded Noah of Miguel at that age. "She's beautiful," Noah said from the doorway. Eva looked up, her face lighting up in a way that transformed her usually serious expression. "She's remarkable. Her pediatrician says her development is perfectly normal, no delays or complications from the heat exposure." Maya looked toward Noah and smiled, a toothless grin that made his chest tight with emotion. She babbled something that might have been a greeting, waving a blue block in his direction. "She knows you," Eva said softly. "I showed her your picture from the newspaper, and she smiled." Noah knelt down beside them, and Maya immediately reached for him, her tiny hands grasping at his work shirt. When he offered his finger, she wrapped her whole hand around it with surprising strength. "She's lucky to have you," Noah said. Eva's smile faltered slightly. "The adoption process is more complicated than I expected. Social workers, home studies, background checks. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being selfish, wanting to keep her. Why would that be selfish? Because I work 60 hours a week. Because I live alone in a house that's too big and too empty. Because I've never been responsible for anyone but myself. Eva's voice was quiet, vulnerable in a way Noah hadn't heard before. But you love her. Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. More than I expected, more than I thought I was capable of. Noah understood. Love wasn't something you planned for or prepared for. It just happened, usually when you least expected it and were least prepared to handle it. She loves you too, he said. Anyone can see that. Maya had fallen asleep in Eva's arms, her small body relaxed and trusting. Eva looked down at her with an expression of wonder and terror, the way all new parents looked when they realized the magnitude of what they'd taken on. My brother died when he was 4, Eva said suddenly. Heat stroke. He was locked in a car while my mother ran into a store. She thought she'd only be gone for a few minutes. Noah felt the pieces of Eva's story clicking into place: her specialization in pediatric medicine, her intensity when discussing Maya's case, her decision to foster a baby who'd nearly died the same way her brother had. I'm sorry, he said. I became a doctor because of him. Every child I save is him in a way. Every family I help is the family we should have been. Eva's eyes were bright with unshed tears. When Maya was brought in, when I saw what had been done to her, I couldn't let her go into the system. I couldn't risk her ending up with someone who might not understand how precious she is. You saved her too, Noah said gently. In a different way than I did, but you saved her. That evening, Noah sat at his kitchen table with Miguel, helping with homework, while the training manual lay open beside him. The eviction notice was gone, replaced by a lease renewal and the kind of financial stability he hadn't experienced since Maria died. Mrs. Rodriguez says you're famous now, Miguel said, looking up from his math worksheet. She says everyone in the neighborhood knows my dad is a hero. What do you think about that? Miguel considered the question seriously, the way he approached all of life's big mysteries. I think you were always a hero. You just did something that other people could see. The wisdom in his son's words made Noah's throat tight. Miguel was right, in his 8-year-old way. Heroes weren't created by viral videos or news coverage. They were revealed by circumstances that demanded courage. I'm proud of you, Daddy, Miguel said quietly. Mom would be proud too. Later that night, after Miguel had gone to bed, Noah sat on the couch, reading about pediatric emergency care. The training manual was filled with scenarios he hoped he'd never encounter, but knowledge was preparation, and preparation saved lives. His phone buzzed with a text from Eva. Thank you for today. Maya slept through the night for the first time this week. I think having you around makes her feel safe. Noah smiled and typed back. She makes all of us feel safe. See you tomorrow. The clinic was becoming more than just a job. It was becoming a mission, a purpose, a way to use his skills for something bigger than himself. For the first time since leaving the military, Noah felt like he was part of something that mattered. The first aid manual represented more than just training. It was a bridge between who he'd been and who he was becoming. The combat medic and the maintenance worker and the single father were all part of the same man, all part of someone who ran toward danger instead of away from it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new repairs, new opportunities to help families who needed advocates. But tonight, Noah was content to study and plan and prepare for whatever came next. The manual fell open to a chapter on pediatric CPR, and Noah found himself thinking about Maya, about the moment when her tiny lungs had started working again under his hands. That moment had changed everything, not just for her, but for him. Sometimes the greatest gift you could give someone was the chance to be who they were meant to be. Eva had given him that chance with the job at the clinic. Maya had given it to him in that parking lot. And maybe, just maybe, he was giving it back to both of them. 6 weeks into his new position at the clinic, Noah was replacing a broken ceiling tile when Eva burst into the maintenance room, her face flushed with excitement and something that looked like hope. I have an idea, she announced, holding up a manila folder thick with papers. A big idea. Noah climbed down from the ladder, noting the way Eva's usual composure had given way to barely contained energy. In the weeks they'd worked together, he'd learned to read her moods, to recognize when her professional mask slipped enough to reveal the passionate advocate underneath. What kind of idea? A prevention campaign. Education, community outreach, policy advocacy. Eva spread papers across the workbench: statistics, research studies, photographs of children who hadn't been as lucky as Maya. Do you know how many children die in hot cars every year? 37 in 2023, 37 preventable deaths. Noah studied the papers, his chest tightening as he read the statistics. Most of the victims were under 2 years old. Most of the incidents were accidents-overwhelmed parents who forgot their children were in the car, who broke their routine and made a fatal mistake. Look before you lock, Eva continued, pulling out a prototype poster. That's the campaign name. Simple, memorable, actionable. The poster featured a photograph of Maya, now 4 months old and thriving, smiling at the camera with bright, alert eyes. Above her picture, bold text read, "Maya survived because someone looked. Look before you lock. Every child deserves a hero." You want to use Maya's story? With proper permissions, yes. Her case generated national attention, but that attention died out after a few news cycles. We need to revive it, redirect it toward prevention. Noah could see the logic, but something about using Maya's trauma for publicity made him uncomfortable. Don't you think that's exploiting what happened to her? I think it's honoring what happened to her. Eva's voice was firm. Maya lived because you looked. Other children die because no one does. If her story saves even one life, isn't that worth it? Eva pulled out more materials: curriculum outlines for school presentations, templates for social media campaigns, draft legislation requiring car manufacturers to install rear seat reminder systems. I've been working on this for weeks, she admitted, researching, planning, reaching out to advocacy groups, but I can't do it alone. What do you need? A partner, someone who understands what it means to save a life, who can speak authentically about the importance of looking out for children. Eva met his eyes. I need the man who saved Maya. Noah felt the familiar weight of expectation, the pressure that came with being seen as a hero. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not comfortable with attention. Neither am I. But this isn't about us. It's about preventing other children from going through what Maya experienced. Eva pulled out the final piece of her presentation: architectural plans for a mobile education unit. I want to convert a truck into a traveling classroom. We'd visit schools, community centers, anywhere parents and children gather. We'd teach recognition, prevention, emergency response. The plans showed a converted pickup truck with fold-out displays, interactive demonstrations, and space for live presentations. It was ambitious, expensive, and exactly the kind of grassroots initiative that could make a real difference. Where would we get the funding? Grants, donations, corporate sponsorships. The initial response to Maya's story generated thousands of dollars in donations to the clinic. People want to help, they just need direction. Noah studied the plans, imagining himself standing in school auditoriums, talking to parents about the importance of vigilance. The idea terrified him, but it also sparked something he hadn't felt since his military days: a sense of mission that went beyond personal survival. You really think this could work? I think we have an obligation to try. Eva's voice was quiet but determined. Maya was lucky. She had you. Other children won't be so fortunate unless we create systemic change. That evening, Noah sat at his kitchen table with Miguel. The campaign materials spread between them like homework. The poster with Maya's photograph dominated the space, her bright eyes seeming to follow their conversation. That's the baby you saved, Miguel observed, studying the poster. She's pretty. She's healthy, Noah corrected. That's what matters. Miguel picked up one of the educational brochures, sounding out the words with careful concentration. Look before you lock. That's smart, Daddy. Easy to remember. Dr. Sinclair thinks we should travel around, teaching people about keeping children safe. Like superheroes? Noah smiled despite himself. More like teachers, but for important stuff. Miguel's eyes lit up with the kind of enthusiasm that made Noah's chest tight with pride and terror. Could I help? I could tell kids about being brave, about how you saved Maya. The idea of involving Miguel in the campaign hadn't occurred to Noah, but he could see the logic. Children often listen to other children more readily than they listen to adults. Miguel's perspective, the son of a hero, a child who understood the importance of safety, could be powerful. That would be up to Dr. Sinclair, Noah said carefully. And it would mean traveling, being away from home sometimes. We could see new places, meet new people. Miguel's imagination was already running ahead of the practical considerations. We could help save more babies. Late that night, after Miguel had gone to bed, Noah called Eva. She answered on the first ring, her voice alert, despite the late hour. "I've been thinking about the campaign," he said. "And?" "I'm in, but I have conditions." "Name them." "Miguel comes with us when possible. This is his story too. He's the son who watched his father be called a hero, who understands what it means to care about strangers." Noah paused. "And we don't just talk about prevention, we teach emergency response. If someone does find a child in distress, they need to know what to do." Agreed. Eva's relief was audible. "Anything else?" "We do this right. No sensationalism, no exploitation. We honor Maya's story, but we don't traumatize her in the process." "Of course." Noah looked at the poster on his kitchen table, at Maya's trusting smile. "When do we start?" The campaign launched 3 weeks later with a press conference at the clinic. Noah stood beside Eva, uncomfortable in his best shirt and tie, while reporters asked questions about their prevention initiative. "The goal isn't to assign blame," Eva was saying. "It's to create systems and habits that prevent tragedy. Parents aren't monsters, they're human beings dealing with stress, exhaustion, and overwhelming responsibility. We need to support them, not judge them." When it was Noah's turn to speak, he thought about Maya, about Miguel, about all the children who deserve to grow up safe and loved. "I didn't save Maya to become famous," he said quietly. "I saved her because that's what you do when you see a child in danger. But saving one life isn't enough if we can prevent 100 others from being at risk." The local news coverage was positive, and within 48 hours, the campaign's social media accounts had thousands of followers. Donations began trickling in: $5 from a grandmother in Flagstaff, $50 from a teachers' union in Tucson, $500 from a corporate foundation in Scottsdale. But it was the message from Maya's adoptive mother that meant the most. "Thank you for turning the worst day of our lives into something that might save other families from the same heartbreak." 2 months later, Noah stood beside a converted pickup truck in the parking lot of Desert Hills Elementary School, watching Miguel help a group of first graders practice the "Look Before You Lock" song they'd written together. The mobile education unit had exceeded all their expectations. In 8 weeks, they'd visited 37 schools, reached over 4,000 children and parents, and distributed 10,000 educational brochures. The truck was covered with thank you notes from children, drawings of cars and babies, and photos from their presentations. "Daddy," Miguel called out, "Mrs. Johnson wants to know if we can come back next month for the kindergarten classes." Noah looked at his son confident, engaged, proud to be part of something important, and felt a familiar surge of gratitude for the chain of events that had brought them here. The campaign poster was mounted on the side of the truck, Maya's photograph bright against the blue background. She was 8 months old now, crawling and babbling, and completely unaware that her story was helping to save other children's lives. Eva emerged from the school building, her professional demeanor replaced by the kind of satisfaction that came from meaningful work. "Principal Martinez wants to make this an annual event. She says the children haven't stopped talking about car safety since our presentation." "Good," Noah said. "That means they're listening." As they packed up their materials and prepared to drive to their next school, Noah reflected on how much had changed in 4 months. He was no longer the invisible warehouse worker, struggling to keep his family afloat. He wasn't hiding from attention or running from responsibility. He was the man who'd saved Maya, but more importantly, he was the man who was helping to prevent other children from needing to be saved. The campaign poster had become more than just marketing material. It was a symbol of hope, proof that tragedy could be transformed into purpose. The truck started with a familiar rumble, and Noah pulled out of the school parking lot with Eva beside him and Miguel in the back seat, already planning their presentation for the next group of children. In the rearview mirror, he could see the campaign poster fluttering in the desert wind, Maya's bright eyes watching over them as they headed toward their next opportunity to make a difference. The threat came disguised as bureaucracy, which Noah had learned was often the most dangerous kind. 3 months into the Look Before You Lock campaign, when their mobile education unit had visited 93 schools and reached over 0 children, the permits started getting revoked. "It doesn't make sense," Eva said, pacing the length of her office while Maya played quietly in her portable crib. "We've had these school district approvals for months. Suddenly, 3 different superintendents are calling to cancel our presentations." Noah studied the cancellation letters spread across Eva's desk. The language was formal, bureaucratic, but the timing was suspicious. All 3 districts had received concerns about curriculum appropriateness from the same source. Steinberg Automotive Group, a regional chain of car dealerships that had significant political connections throughout Arizona. "Their donors," Eva continued, pulling up the school district's public funding records on her laptop. "Steinberg Automotive sponsors youth sports programs, provides vehicles for drivers' education, funds technology initiatives. Why would car dealers want to stop heat safety education?" Eva's expression was grim as she opened another file on her computer. "Because we're not just teaching prevention anymore, we're advocating for legislative change." The campaign had evolved beyond simple education. Their presentations now included information about proposed federal legislation requiring car manufacturers to install rear seat reminder system sortable alerts that would sound if a car was turned off while weight sensors detected a presence in the back seat. "Steinberg Automotive sells aftermarket safety accessories," Eva explained. "Seat alarms, mirror attachments, temperature monitors. If car manufacturers are required to install these features as standard equipment, it eliminates a significant revenue stream." Noah felt a familiar anger building in his chest, the same rage he'd experienced in Afghanistan when he'd encountered corruption that cost lives. "They're putting profits ahead of children's safety." "It gets worse." Eva pulled up a news article on her phone. "I got a call this morning from the investigative reporter who wrote this piece. Steinberg Automotive has been lobbying against the federal legislation, claiming it's unnecessary government overreach." The article detailed how automotive industry groups had spent over $2 million lobbying against rear seat reminder requirements, arguing that consumer education was sufficient to prevent hot car deaths. "They're not just canceling our school presentations," Eva said quietly. "They're actively working to prevent the kind of systemic change that would save children's lives." Noah's phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. "Daddy, Mrs. Johnson says we can't come back to Desert Hills Elementary. She seemed sad about it." The personal impact hit Noah harder than the political implications. Miguel had found purpose in their campaign work, had developed confidence and public speaking skills that would serve him for the rest of his life. Now that opportunity was being taken away by people who saw child safety as a threat to their profit margins. "There's more," Eva said, her voice heavy. "Our biggest fundraiser is next month, the charity gala at the Phoenician Resort. Steinberg Automotive just made a $50,000 donation to the venue's children's charity. Suddenly, there are scheduling conflicts with our event." The fundraiser was crucial to the clinic's survival. They'd sold 200 tickets, secured corporate sponsors, and planned an auction that would raise enough money to keep their doors open for another year. Without it, the clinic would be forced to close within 6 months. "Can we find another venue?" "Not with 3 weeks' notice." Every decent facility in the city is either booked or owned by someone with ties to Steinberg. Eva sank into her chair, looking defeated for the first time since Noah had known her. They're trying to destroy us. Maya began to fuss in her crib, sensing the tension in the room. Eva lifted her daughter. The adoption had been finalized the previous month, and the baby immediately calmed, reaching for Eva's stethoscope with curious fingers. "We can't let them win," Noah said quietly. "I don't see how we can stop them. They have money, political connections, industry influence. We have a pickup truck and a handful of dedicated volunteers." Noah thought about his military service, about asymmetric warfare and the power of small, motivated forces against larger, more conventional enemies. The key was never to fight the enemies, fight it, was to change the battlefield entirely. "What if we don't need a venue?" he said slowly. "What do you mean?" "The warehouse district. Southwest Distribution has a loading dock that could hold 500 people. Jim Hendricks owes me a favor, and the company owes the community some goodwill after all the positive press about Maya's rescue." Eva looked up sharply. "You want to hold a fundraiser at a warehouse?" "Why not? It's where this whole story started. It's authentic, it's available, and it's the one place in the city that Steinberg Automotive has no influence over." For the first time in hours, Eva's expression brightened. A grassroots fundraiser, back to basics, focus on the mission instead of the venue. "We could set up the mobile education unit as the centerpiece, have Maya there as the guest of honor, make it about community, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things." Eva was already making notes on her tablet. Food trucks instead of catered dinner, local businesses donating auction items, families who've been helped by the clinic sharing their stories. "And we live stream everything," Noah added, his strategic mind fully engaged now. "Social media, the campaign website, local news if they'll cover it. Make it impossible for Steinberg to shut us down without looking like they're attacking a children's charity." Maya gurgled and reached for Noah, her small hands grasping at his work shirt. He took her gently, marveling as always at how much she'd grown since that terrifying day in the parking lot. She was walking now, chattering in her own baby language, completely unaware that her survival had sparked a movement. "There's something else," Eva said, pulling up another document on her computer. "I got a call from Congressman Bradley's office. The federal legislation, the CARS Act, is coming up for a vote next month. They want you to testify before the House subcommittee." Noah's blood ran cold. "Testify? In front of Congress? You're the face of this issue now, the man who saved Maya, who's dedicated his life to preventing other tragedies. Your testimony could make the difference between the bill passing or failing." The weight of that responsibility settled on Noah's shoulders like a physical burden. Maya's life in his hands had been terrifying enough. Now the lives of countless future children were depending on his ability to convince politicians to do the right thing. "I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not a professional advocate. You're better than either of those things," Eva said firmly. "You're a father who saved a child and turned that act into a mission. That's more powerful than any professional credential." Noah looked down at Maya, who was now trying to chew on his shirt button with serious concentration. This little girl had changed everything: his career, his purpose, his understanding of what it meant to be a hero. Now she was asking him to change even more. "If I testify, if I become the public face of this legislation, Steinberg and their allies will come after me personally. They'll dig into my background, attack my credibility, try to discredit everything we've built." "Yes," Eva said quietly, "they probably will. And if the bill fails, if children keep dying because car manufacturers refuse to install simple safety features, that failure will be on me." "No," Eva said firmly. "It will be on the people who choose profits over children's lives. You're just the messenger." Noah's phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed Jim Hendricks' number. "Noah," Jim's voice was tense. "I just got a call from corporate. Some hotshot lawyer from Steinberg Automotive contacted them about security concerns regarding the fundraiser. They're pressuring the company to revoke permission for the event." Noah's grip tightened on the phone. What did you tell them? I told them to go to hell, but I'm not sure how long I can hold them off. Corporate doesn't want to get involved in political controversies. After hanging up, Noah looked at Eva, who'd clearly heard enough of the conversation to understand the implications. They're escalating, she said. Good, Noah replied, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. That means we're making them nervous. Eva studied his face. You're not backing down. Maya didn't back down when she was fighting for her life in that car. Miguel doesn't back down when his asthma makes it hard to breathe. You didn't back down when you decided to adopt a baby and start a clinic. Noah shifted Maya to his other arm. I'm not backing down either. That evening, Noah sat at his kitchen table with Miguel, helping with homework, while making plans for the most important fight of his life. The warehouse keys Jim had given him lay beside Miguel's math book, a symbol of trust and possibility. Dad, Miguel looked up from his worksheet. Mrs. Rodriguez says some bad people are trying to stop our campaign. Noah chose his words carefully. Some people think that making money is more important than keeping children safe. We disagree. Are we going to fight them? We're going to do what's right, even if it's hard. Sometimes that's the same thing as fighting. Miguel nodded solemnly. Mom always said you were brave. I think she knew you'd do something important someday. Later that night, Noah stood in Maya's nursery at Eva's house, watching the baby sleep, while Eva finished her preparations for the emergency fundraiser. The room was painted in soft yellows and greens, with photographs from their campaign covering one-wall schools they'd visited, children they'd taught, families they'd helped. The warehouse is perfect, Eva said quietly, joining him at the crib. It's honest, it's real, and it tells our story better than any fancy hotel ballroom could. Are you ready for this to get ugly? Eva's hand found his in the dim light. I've been ready since my brother died. Some fights are worth having, even if you're not sure you can win. Noah squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her certainty. Tomorrow would bring more pressure, more threats, more attempts to silence their message. But tonight, watching Maya sleep peacefully in her crib, he felt the quiet determination that had carried him through combat and loss and single parenthood. The warehouse keys in his pocket felt warm and solid, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was open a door and invite people to see the truth for themselves. In 3 weeks, they would hold their fundraiser in the same place where Noah had once moved boxes for barely enough money to survive. It would be a full-circle moment, a transformation of space and purpose that proved even the most ordinary places could become stages for extraordinary things. Maya stirred in her sleep, her small hand curling around the stuffed animal Noah had given Hera teddy bear wearing a tiny orange vest. It was a gift that connected her present to her past, a reminder that heroes came in all sizes and that courage was often measured not in grand gestures but in simple acts of love. The fundraiser venue contract lay on Eva's desk downstairs, officially worthless now that Steinberg's influence had made it impossible to honor. But the warehouse keys in Noah's pocket were worth more than any legal document. They represented something that couldn't be bought or bullied or buried in bureaucracy, the power of ordinary people to extraordinary things when they refused to give up. The fight was just beginning, but Noah was ready for it. Maya was counting on him. Miguel was counting on him. And somewhere in America, children who hadn't even been born yet were counting on him too. The night before the fundraiser, Noah stood in the cavernous space of Southwest Distribution's main loading dock, watching volunteers transform the industrial warehouse into something extraordinary. String lights hung from the ceiling beams, donated flowers softened the concrete walls, and the mobile education unit sat center stage like a monument to their mission. Jim Hendricks approached with a clipboard and a satisfied grin. Corporate tried one more time to shut us down. Got a call from their lawyer this afternoon, demanding we revoke the permit. What did you tell them? I told them the permit was issued by the warehouse manager. That's me, and the warehouse manager answers to the employees who make this place run. Jim's grin widened. Funny thing about a union shop. Management can suggest, but they can't override when the workers stand together. Noah felt a surge of gratitude for the man who'd given him his first real chance, who'd seen potential in a struggling single father when others saw only another warehouse worker. Besides, Jim continued, half my guys have kids. They understand what you're fighting for. The fundraiser was scheduled to start at 6 p.m., but families had been arriving since 5, drawn by the food trucks parked outside and the excitement of being part of something important. Children ran between the displays while their parents examined the educational materials, many of them recognizing Noah from the news coverage. Eva appeared at his elbow, looking nervous but determined in a simple black dress that was both elegant and practical. Channel 12 is here for a live broadcast. The reporter wants to interview you and Maya together. Noah looked toward the makeshift stage where Maya sat in her portable high chair, charming everyone within reach with her babbled commentary and infectious smile. At 10 months old, she was a natural performer, completely comfortable being the center of attention. How many people? Noah asked. 400 and counting. We had to open the overflow area in the shipping bay. Eva's voice carried a mixture of pride and amazement. The GoFundMe page hit $50,000 an hour ago, and people are still donating online. Noah spotted Miguel near the mobile education unit, confidently explaining the campaign materials to a group of adults who listened with the kind of attention usually reserved for experts. His son had found his voice through their work together, had discovered that age didn't matter when you had something important to say. Mr. Alvarez, a young woman with a Channel 12 microphone, approached. I'm Jessica Torres. Could we do a quick interview before the main presentation? Noah straightened his tithe. The same one he'd worn for his first interview with Eva, followed the reporter toward the cameras. The questions were predictable but important. How did it feel to see Maya thriving? What did the campaign mean to him personally? What message did he have for parents? Maya is proof that split-second decisions can change everything, Noah said, his eyes finding the baby across the warehouse. But our campaign is about making sure those split-second decisions never have to happen. Prevention is always better than rescue. As the interview concluded, Noah noticed a commotion near the entrance. 3 men in expensive suits were arguing with the volunteer check-in team, their voices carrying across the warehouse floor. Gentlemen, Noah heard Jim Hendricks say firmly, this is a private event. If you don't have tickets, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The tallest of the 3 men, silver-haired, with a kind of commanding presence that came from years of getting his way stepped forward. I'm Richard Steinberg. I think there's been some confusion about tonight's event. Noah felt the temperature in the warehouse drop several degrees. Conversations stopped, heads turned, and suddenly everyone was watching the confrontation unfold. No confusion, Jim replied calmly. This is a fundraiser for Phoenix Children's Community Health Center. You're not on the guest list. Mr. Steinberg, Eva said, approaching with Maya in her arms, what can we do for you? Steinberg's eyes swept the warehouse, taking in the displays, the crowd, the cameras. I'm here to offer a reasonable solution to what's become an unfortunate misunderstanding. He gestured to one of his companions, who opened a briefcase and pulled out an official-looking document. Steinberg Automotive Group is prepared to make a substantial donation to your clinic, $200,000 in exchange for ending this divisive campaign. The warehouse fell completely silent. $200,000 was more than the clinic's entire annual budget, enough to expand services, hire additional staff, and ensure Maya's future care. That's a generous offer, Eva said carefully, but our campaign isn't for sale. Steinberg's smile was practiced, condescending. Dr. Sinclair, I admire your passion, but you're fighting a battle you can't win. The automotive industry has resources and connections that dwarf your grassroots efforts. Accept our donation, focus on treating children instead of playing politics, and everyone benefits. Noah stepped forward, his military bearing evident in the way he carried himself. Mr. Steinberg, do you have children? The question seemed to catch Steinberg off guard. I have 3 grandchildren. Would you leave them in a hot car? Of course not. Then why are you fighting legislation that would prevent other people from making that mistake? Steinberg's facade cracked slightly. The free market has always been the best driver of innovation and safety. Government mandates stifle creativity and increase costs for consumers. How much does a life cost? Noah asked quietly. The question hung in the air, amplified by the warehouse's acoustics and the absolute silence of 400 people waiting for an answer. Steinberg recovered his composure quickly. Mr. Alvarez, you've become something of a celebrity, but celebrity doesn't give you expertise in automotive engineering or market economics. Perhaps you should stick to what you know. I know what dead children look like, Noah said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of experience. I know what it feels like to hold a baby who's dying from heat stroke. I know what it sounds like when parents realize they've killed their own child through a moment of distraction. Maya chose that moment to reach for Noah, babbling something that might have been his name. He took her gently, and she settled against his shoulder with complete trust. This is Maya. Noah continued, his voice softening as he spoke to the baby. She survived because someone looked, because someone acted, because someone decided her life was worth the risk of breaking a window. He looked back at Steinberg. Your industry could prevent every future Maya from needing to be rescued. Simple technology, minimal cost, standard equipment. But you'd rather sell expensive aftermarket accessories to parents who can afford them and let poor families take their chances. That's an oversimplification. It's the truth. Eva stepped forward, her professional composure giving way to passionate advocacy. We've read your lobbying reports, Mr. Steinberg. Your industry has spent millions fighting safety requirements that would cost manufacturers less than $50 per vehicle to implement. Miguel appeared at Noah's side, looking up at Steinberg with the kind of fearless curiosity that only children possessed. Are you the man who's trying to stop us from saving babies? Steinberg looked down at the 8-year-old boy, clearly unprepared for such directness. Son, adults are discussing complicated business matters. My dad says adults make things complicated when they don't want to do the right thing. Miguel interrupted. Maya almost died because someone left her in a hot car. We're trying to make sure that doesn't happen to other babies. Why don't you want to help? The warehouse erupted in applause, 400 people showing their support for the boy who'd cut through the rhetoric to the heart of the matter. Steinberg's face flushed red, but he maintained his composure. My offer stands, he said, raising his voice to be heard over the applause. $200,000 for your clinic, and an end to this misguided campaign. Noah adjusted Maya in his arms and looked out at the crowd families who'd been helped by the clinic, parents who understood the terror of almost losing a child, children who'd learned about safety through their presentations. Mr. Steinberg, Noah said, his voice carrying clearly through the warehouse. Some things aren't for sale. The warehouse erupted again, this time in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Steinberg and his companions retreated toward the exit, but not before the lead attorney handed Jim Hendricks another document. You'll be hearing from us, Steinberg called over the noise. As the applause finally died down, Jim unfolded the document and read it quickly. His expression darkened. What is it? Eva asked. Cease and desist order. They're claiming trademark infringement on our campaign slogan, defamation of their business practices, and interference with contractual relationships. Jim looked up grimly. They're suing us for $10 million. The warehouse fell silent again, the weight of that number settling over the crowd like a shroud. $10 million would destroy the clinic, end the campaign, and bankrupt everyone involved. But Noah felt something unexpected as he looked out at the faces of families who'd come to support their cause, not fear, but determination. Maya gurgled against his shoulder, completely unaware that her future and the future of countless children hung in the balance. Ladies and gentlemen, Noah said, his voice carrying to every corner of the warehouse, let's raise some money. The fundraiser continued, but now it carried the weight of defiance as well as hope. Every dollar donated was a vote against intimidation. Every story shared was a declaration that some principles were worth fighting for, regardless of the cost. As the evening continued, Noah realized that Steinberg had made a crucial mistake. By threatening them publicly, in front of families and cameras and children, he'd transformed their fundraiser into something much more powerful, a rally for justice. The warehouse keys in Noah's pocket felt warm and solid, a reminder that sometimes the most important battles were fought not in boardrooms or courtrooms, but in the places where ordinary people gathered to do extraordinary things. The check arrived at the clinic on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the warehouse fundraiser, and one day before Noah was scheduled to testify before Congress. Eva stared at the amount, 847, zeroth, a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. The GoFundMe account hit $1 million overnight. She told Noah, her voice shaking slightly. Corporate sponsors, individual donations, foundations, everyone saw the news coverage of Steinberg's threats and decided to fight back. Noah looked up from the wheelchair he was repairing, his hands still covered in grease, but his expression reflecting the same amazement Eva felt. 800,000, plus the money raised at the warehouse event, plus the ongoing monthly donations from our sponsor families. Eva sat heavily in her desk chair, Maya playing quietly at her feet. We're not just surviving, we're thriving. The legal battle with Steinberg Automotive had backfired spectacularly. Their public attempt to intimidate a children's charity had generated massive negative publicity, forcing the company to withdraw their lawsuit within a week. The video of Richard Steinberg threatening to sue a baby and her father had gone viral, spawning memes, protest hashtags, and a consumer boycott that had cost the company millions in lost sales. There's more, Eva continued, pulling up an email on her laptop. The Department of Transportation wants to partner with us on a national education campaign. Federal funding, nationwide rollout, integration with existing child safety programs. Noah set down his tools and really looked at Eva for the first time that morning. She was glowing with the kind of satisfaction that came from seeing justice prevail, but there was something else in her expression, joy that went beyond professional success. You did it, he said quietly. We did it. Eva's eyes met his across the office. Maya did it. This whole community did it. Maya chose that moment to pull herself up using Eva's desk chair, babbling excitedly as she showed off her newest skill. She was walking now, taking tentative steps between furniture and people, her confidence growing daily. Speaking of doing things, Eva said, her voice taking on a different tone. There's something I need to tell you before you leave for Washington. Noah felt his chest tighten. Something in Eva's voice suggested this wasn't about the clinic or the campaign. The adoption agency called yesterday. Eva continued. Maya's placement with me has been made permanent. Officially, legally, permanently, she's my daughter. Relief flooded through Noah. Despite all the positive developments, he'd worried that the legal challenges and media attention might complicate Maya's adoption. That's wonderful, he said. She belongs with you. Yes, she does. Eva paused, choosing her words carefully. But she also belongs with you, and Miguel. You're her family too, in every way that matters. Noah felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of a truth he'd been avoiding for months. Maya wasn't just the baby he'd saved. She was the little girl who reached for him when she was tired, who smiled when she heard his voice, who had become as much a part of his life as breathing. Eva, I'm not asking you to marry me, Eva said quickly, her cheeks flushing. I'm asking you to be honest about what we've built here. You and Miguel, Maya and Muir, already a family. We have been for months. Noah looked around the office that had become a second home, at the woman who'd given him purpose beyond survival, at the baby who'd changed everything by simply needing to be saved. The house is too big for just Maya and me, Eva continued. Miguel loves the pool, and there's a workshop in the garage where you could set up your tools. Maya's already asking for you when you're not here. Well, she's babbling something that sounds like Noah anyway. The invitation hung between them, weighted with possibility and hope. Noah thought about his small apartment, about the careful distance he'd maintained between his work life and personal life, about the walls he'd built to protect himself and Miguel from further loss. "What if it doesn't work?" he asked quietly. "What if it does?" Eva countered. "What if instead of two single parents struggling alone, we become one family that's stronger together?" Maya solved the immediate dilemma by walking unsteadily across the office and grabbing Noah's pant leg, looking up at him with an expression of pure trust and affection. She babbled something that definitely sounded like his name. "I think she's voting yes," Eva said softly. That evening, Noah sat in a hotel room in Washington, D.C., reviewing his testimony for the next day's hearing, while Miguel video called from Eva's house. On the screen, he could see Maya in the background, playing with blocks while Eva made dinner. "The pool is amazing, Dad," Miguel was saying. "And Eva says when you get back, we can all go swimming together, like a real family. How do you feel about that? About the possibility of living with Eva and Maya?" Miguel's expression grew serious, the way it always did when he was considering something important. "I think Mom would like Eva. They're both doctors who help kids. And Maya needs a big brother to teach her stuff. And you're okay with being a big brother?" "I've been practicing. Eva says I'm really good at making Maya laugh." Miguel's face brightened. "Plus, if we live together, we can do more campaign stuff. We could have a whole room for our materials." Later that night, Noah stood at his hotel window, looking out at the Capitol building, its dome illuminated against the dark sky. Tomorrow, he would sit before a congressional subcommittee and argue for legislation that could save dozens of children's lives every year. The written testimony sat on his desk, 3 pages of carefully crafted arguments about the technical feasibility of rear seat reminder systems, the cost-benefit analysis of preventing heatstroke deaths, and the moral imperative of protecting children through simple technology. But Noah knew the real testimony would be simpler than that. It would be about Maya's smile, about the moment her tiny heart had stopped beating in that parking lot, about the choice between profits and children's lives. His phone buzzed with a text from Eva. Maya's bedtime story tonight was about a brave man who saved a baby and then helped save lots more babies. She clapped at the end. Noah smiled and typed back, "How does the story end?" "With everyone living happily ever after," Maya insisted on that part. The next morning, Noah sat at a witness table in a congressional hearing room, facing a panel of representatives who would decide the fate of the CARS Act. The room was packed with lobbyists, advocates, families affected by hot car deaths, and reporters covering the story. "Mr. Alvarez," the committee chair began, "you've become something of a reluctant spokesman for this issue. Can you tell us why this legislation matters to you personally?" Noah looked out at the gallery and found Eva in the audience, holding Maya and sitting next to Miguel. The baby waved when she saw him, and Noah felt his nervousness settle into determination. "Congressman, 6 months ago, I was just a warehouse worker, trying to keep my family afloat. I never wanted to be a spokesman or an advocate or a public figure. But I couldn't walk away from a baby who was dying. And I can't walk away from the knowledge that other children will die without this legislation." He pulled out a photograph of Maya from his jacket pocket, not the campaign poster, but a simple snapshot Eva had taken of the baby playing in her nursery. "This is Maya. She's 10 months old now, walking and talking and completely unaware that she almost died. The technology that could have prevented her situation already exists. Car manufacturers can install rear seat reminder systems for less than $50 per vehicle. The only question is whether we have the courage to require them to do it." A representative from Texas leaned forward. "Mr. Alvarez, the automotive industry argues that consumer education is sufficient to prevent these tragedies. How do you respond to that?" "Congressman, I've spent 6 months educating parents about hot car safety. Education is important, but it's not enough. Good parents make mistakes. Loving parents get distracted. Technology can provide a backup system for human error. But don't you think mandating this technology infringes on free market principles?" Noah thought about Richard Steinberg, about the $10 million lawsuit, about all the ways money had been used to silence their message. "Sir, the free market didn't save Maya's life, a person did. And if we rely solely on the free market to protect children, we'll keep losing children who could have been saved for the cost of a fast food meal. The hearing continued for 2 hours, with technical experts, industry representatives, and other advocates presenting their positions. But Noah knew the moment that mattered most came when a representative from California asked him directly, "If this legislation passes, what happens next?" Noah looked at Maya in the gallery, at Miguel sitting proudly beside Eva, at the families who'd traveled to Washington to support the bill. If this legislation passes, Congressman, children live. Parents don't have to carry the guilt of a momentary mistake for the rest of their lives. Families stay together instead of being destroyed by preventable tragedies. He paused, thinking about the check that would allow the clinic to expand, about the house where Maya and Miguel could grow up together, about the future they'd built from the wreckage of one terrible day. And maybe, just maybe, we prove that doing the right thing still matters more than protecting profit margins. The vote was scheduled for the following week, but Noah knew they'd won when the industry lobbyists started packing up their briefcases before the hearing ended. Sometimes, the truth was powerful enough to overcome even the most expensive opposition. As Noah left the witness table, Maya broke free from Eva's arms and toddled toward him on unsteady legs, her face bright with recognition and joy. He scooped her up, and she babbled something that definitely sounded like "Dada." The photographers captured the moment the man who'd saved a baby's life, holding that same child, while she called him father. But Noah barely noticed the cameras. He was looking at Eva, at Miguel, at the family they'd accidentally created while trying to save the world. The check for clinic funding would ensure their mission continued. The CARES Act would save countless children. But this moment, Maya in his arms, calling him family, was worth more than any victory they'd achieved. 1 year later, Noah stood in the same parking lot where everything had changed, watching Miguel teach a group of children how to check for babies before leaving their cars. The asphalt still shimmered in the Arizona heat, but now it held different memories, not just of emergency and fear, but of transformation and hope. "Remember," Miguel was saying to his attentive audience, "look in the back seat every time, even if you're sure no one is there. It only takes a second, and it could save a life." The children nodded solidly, hanging on every word from the 12-year-old, who'd become something of a celebrity in his own right. Miguel had grown into his role as the campaign's youngest spokesperson, traveling with Noah and Eva to schools and community centers across the Southwest. Eva emerged from the mobile education unit, now one of 5 trucks in their fleet, carrying Maya and a tablet full of program evaluations. At 14 months, Maya was a confident walker and an enthusiastic talker, her vocabulary consisting primarily of "Dada," "Mama," "Miguel," and "truck." "The Phoenix School District wants to make our program mandatory for all elementary schools," Eva reported, joining Noah near the spot where he'd first seen Maya in distress. 63,000 children reached this year, with measurable improvements in parent awareness and child safety behaviors. Noah smiled, remembering when reaching 100 children had seemed impossible. The Look Before You Lock campaign had grown beyond their wildest expectations, funded by the congressional appropriation that had followed the passage of the CARES Act and supported by partnerships with major non-profits across the country. Any word on the federal rollout? Department of Transportation approved our proposal. We'll be training teams in 12 states over the next 2 years. Eva's professional pride was evident, but Noah could see the personal satisfaction underneath. Maya's story is going to reach millions of families. Maya chose that moment to demand freedom, wriggling in Eva's arms until she was set down to toddle toward Miguel and his group of students. She'd become the campaign's unofficial mascot, appearing in educational videos and public service announcements with the kind of natural charisma that made even cynical reporters smile. "Hard to believe it all started here," Noah said, looking around the parking lot that had been transformed into their temporary outdoor classroom. "It started before here," Eva corrected gently. "It started when you decided to be the kind of person who looks when others look away." Noah thought about that assessment as he watched their makeshift family interact with the children and parents who'd come for the anniversary event. Eva was right, the choice to act hadn't begun in this parking lot. It had been building through years of military service, months of caring for Miguel alone, countless moments when he'd chosen responsibility over self-preservation. The warehouse behind them looked exactly the same as it had a year ago, but Noah's relationship to the place had changed completely. He was no longer the invisible employee counting hours until quitting time. Now he was a partner in Southwest Distribution's community outreach programs, using his maintenance skills and first aid training to support local schools and non-profits. Daddy! Maya had abandoned Miguel's group and was running toward Noah with the unsteady enthusiasm of a toddler who'd just mastered locomotion. He swept her up, marveling as always at how much she'd grown and changed. "How's my girl?" "Truck," Maya announced proudly, pointing toward the mobile education unit. "Maya, truck." "That's right, it's Maya's truck." Noah looked at Eva over Maya's head. "Speaking of trucks, did the insurance come through for the expansion fleet?" "Approved yesterday. 5 more vehicles, each customized for different age groups." Eva's smile was radiant. "We're going to be able to reach every child in Arizona within 3 years." Miguel approached with his group of students in tow, all of them eager to meet the baby who'd inspired their safety lessons. "Maya, these kids want to hear you say your alphabet." Maya, never one to turn down an audience, launched into her version of the alphabet songa, enthusiastic babble that hit about half the actual letters, but made up for accuracy with volume and conviction. "She's going to be a natural public speaker," Eva observed. "She already is," Noah replied, watching his daughter because that's what Maya was now, officially and completely charm her audience with pure personality. The adoption papers had been finalized 6 months ago, making Noah and Eva Maya's legal parents and creating the family structure that had already existed in practice. Miguel had been thrilled to become an official big brother, taking his responsibilities seriously while still maintaining his own identity within their blended household. As the anniversary event concluded and families began heading home, Noah found himself alone with Eva and the children in the parking lot, where their story had begun. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the asphalt, and the temperature was finally dropping below 100 degrees. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd walked away that day?" Eva asked. Noah considered the question seriously. "Sometimes, but I don't think I could have. It wasn't really a choice no for me." "That's what makes you a hero." "No," Noah said, watching Miguel help Maya practice walking in a straight line. "What makes me a hero is what happened after. Anyone can act in a crisis. Building something lasting from that action, that's the real work." Eva's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Are you happy with how everything turned out?" Noah looked around the parking lot, then at the family photo in his wallet, a simple snapshot taken at Maya's first birthday party, showing all 4 of them laughing at something Miguel had said. The image captured a moment of pure joy, the kind of happiness that came from being exactly where you belonged. "I'm grateful," he said finally, "for Maya, for you, for the chance to turn the worst day of someone's life into something that saves other people's children." Maya had tired of walking practice and was now sitting on the asphalt, carefully examining a small rock she'd discovered. Miguel sat beside her, patiently explaining the difference between regular rocks and special rocks, while Maya listened with the serious attention she gave to all of her big brother's lessons. "We should head home," Eva said, but she made no move to gather their things. The parking lot had become a sacred space for their family, a place they returned to whenever they needed to remember how far they'd come. 5 more minutes, Noah said, not ready to leave just yet. His phone buzzed with a text message, and he smiled when he read it. "Jim Hendricks says the warehouse fundraiser raised another $30,000 for the clinic's expansion. They want to make it an annual event." "Of course they do. Half the city shows up now," Eva laughed. "Remember when we thought we'd be lucky to get 100 people? Noah remembered that night vividly, the terror of being discovered, the desperation of trying to save the clinic, the moment when Richard Steinberg had tried to buy their silence. It seemed like a lifetime ago, though it had been less than a year. Steinberg Automotive had never recovered from the public relations disaster. The company had been sold to a larger corporation that immediately implemented rear seat reminder systems as standard equipment, turning their former opposition into a marketing advantage. Richard Steinberg himself had retired quietly, his reputation permanently tarnished by his attempt to silence a children's charity. "Daddy," Miguel called out, "Maya found a really good rock. She wants to take it home." Noah walked over to examine Maya's treasure, piece of ordinary gravel that had somehow captured her imagination. "That is a very special rock," he agreed solemnly. "We should definitely take it home." Maya beamed and carefully handed the rock to Miguel for safekeeping, trusting her big brother with her most precious possessions. The bond between them had grown stronger every day, built on shared adventures and mutual devotion. "Story time when we get home?" Miguel asked hopefully. "Absolutely. It's Tuesday. Maya gets to pick the book." Maya clapped her hands excitedly. She couldn't read yet, but she had strong opinions about which pictures were worth looking at and which stories deserved multiple readings. As they packed up their materials and prepared to leave, Noah took one last look around the parking lot. The mobile education unit sat where the black SUV had been parked that terrible day, its bright graphics and cheerful message, a testament to how something beautiful could grow from something horrific. The family photo tucked in his wallet seemed to call to him, and Noah pulled it out for another look. The picture had been taken at Maya's adoption celebration, all four of them crowded together on the couch in Eva's living room now, their living room. Miguel was making bunny ears behind Maya's head while she reached for the camera, and Eva was laughing at something happening just outside the frame. It was the kind of photo that captured not just a moment, but a feeling, the specific joy that came from being part of something bigger than yourself, from finding your people in unexpected places, from building a family through choice rather than chance. "Ready?" Eva asked, adjusting Maya on her hip, while Miguel carefully pocketed his sister's special rock. "Ready," Noah confirmed, taking one final look at the spot where everything had changed. The drive home took them through neighborhoods where they'd conducted presentations, past schools where children now practiced the safety habits they'd learned, by billboards featuring Maya's smiling face and the campaign's simple message. The impact of their work was visible everywhere, woven into the fabric of their community. At home, and it was home now, completely and permanently, Noah sat in the workshop Eva had set up for him in the garage, putting the finishing touches on a wooden toy truck he'd been carving for Maya's upcoming birthday. The garage was filled with the tools of both his trades, maintenance equipment for the clinic and woodworking supplies for the furniture he'd started making as a hobby. Through the window, he could see Eva in the living room, reading to Maya while Miguel worked on homework at the kitchen table. The scene was so perfectly ordinary, so wonderfully mundane, that Noah had to stop and simply appreciate it. 2 years ago, he'd been a struggling single father, invisible to the world and focused solely on survival. Now he was part of a family that had accidentally changed national policy, saved countless children's lives, and proven that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things when they refused to look away from injustice. The wooden truck was nearly finished, painted in bright blue with Maya carved carefully along the side. It would join the collection of handmade toys that filled Maya's nursery, each one a labor of love from the man who'd saved her life and then dedicated his own life to saving others. His phone buzzed with an email notification. The message was from a family in Nebraska whose 3-year-old daughter had been saved by someone who'd attended one of their presentations. The parents wanted to start their own local campaign, spreading the "look before you lock" message through their school district. Noah forwarded the email to Eva with a note. Number 847, Maya's still saving lives. The response came back immediately. "Story time is starting. Maya picked the book about the brave daddy. Again." Noah smiled and headed inside, where his family was waiting. Maya looked up when he entered the living room, her face lighting up with the kind of pure joy that made every sacrifice worthwhile. Dada, story. Coming, sweetheart. As Noah settled onto the couch with his family, Maya curled against his side while Miguel leaned against Eva's shoulder. He reflected on the unexpected path that had brought them here. The man who'd broken a car window to save a dying baby had become a father, an advocate, a hero in the truest sense of the word. But more than that, he'd become exactly who he was meant to be, not in spite of that terrible day in the parking lot, but because of it. Sometimes the worst moments of your life were actually doorways to the best parts of yourself. The family photo on the mantel caught the last rays of afternoon sunlight, 4 people who'd found each other through tragedy and built something beautiful from the broken pieces. Maya's special rock sat beside the photo, a small reminder that treasures could be found in the most ordinary places. Outside, the Arizona heat was finally beginning to break as evening approached. Somewhere in the city, parents were buckling their children into car seats and remembering to look in the back seat before locking their doors. Somewhere else, a person was making the choice to act instead of walking away from someone in need. The ripples of one moment of courage continued to spread, carrying Maya's story and Noah's example to families who would never know their names, but whose children were safer because of what they'd built together. Noah opened the storybook and began to read, his voice joining the chorus of parents around the world who were tucking their children into bed, safe and loved and protected by communities that refused to let them face danger alone. In the end, that's what heroism really was, not grand gestures captured on security cameras, but the daily choice to care for each other, to build something better than what you'd inherited, and to make sure that no child ever had to face the world without someone watching over them. Maya fell asleep against Noah's shoulder halfway through the story, her small hand clutching the wooden truck he'd made for her. In her dreams, she was probably running through parking lots and climbing into bright blue trucks, completely unaware that she was the reason those trucks existed. And that was exactly how it should be. Heroes didn't work for recognition or gratitude. They worked so that children like Maya could grow up in a world where being saved was so common, so expected, that it didn't even seem remarkable. The family photo on the mantel seemed to glow in the evening light, a simple image that contained multitudes' love found in unexpected places, families built from choice and courage, and the endless possibility that came from refusing to walk away when someone needed help. Sometimes, stepping through shattered glass changed everything. Sometimes, the person who felt most broken ended up putting an entire community back together. And sometimes, the greatest act of heroism was simply choosing to stay, to build, and to love fiercely enough to change the world.